We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
G'day guys, Brandon Clift here, host of the Mankind podcast, wanting to ask you the question of what does a successful middle-aged white dude, an African-American woman, an African-American man, and a trans queer man have in common? Well, they are all committed to normalizing conversations around power, privilege, and difference. See, I threw a bit of a zinger there. I don't know if you're thinking it was going to be a trick question or not, but what we have with us today are 4 individuals committed to helping you, me, and all people of difference better understand the role they can play around understanding what makes us different. So today's conversation, the lead up to it, I felt a little bit uncomfortable facilitating a panel discussion. And it's not our first panel discussions, but it will be the first one that we've done for this show. And so things that you're going to hear as we go through this episode are going to be, really understanding how to approach these kind of taboo conversations that aren't always had at the dinner table, right? Or more specifically, conversations that aren't always had at different dinner tables, right? It's very easy for me and my white friends and family to sit at a table and talk about our feelings around difference, around race, around gender. But how does that conversation change when we have a person of color at the table? What about someone who is non-binary and doesn't subscribe to a gender role? See, this is where the challenge is, but this is also where the gold is. And so with our panel today, I hope you can really listen out for the keys, right? Those specific keys that are going to gain you access to the conversation, that is going to invite you into the greater dialogue that's happening around the world right now. And so with great pleasure, with great honor, I would like to welcome Henry Thurman, Meg McClellan Rick Broniec, and Nicklin Heap to the Mankind podcast to unpack power, privilege, and difference. Enjoy. G'day and welcome to another live recording of the Mankind podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove that there is more than just one way to be a man. I'm your host, Brandon Clift, and I am so excited to be here with a panel. It has been so long since I have done a group discussion around a topic, and today's going to be many topics. Usually it's a one-on-one kind of interface, and so I'm excited to be joined by all of these incredible, smiling, happy faces to help me, all of us, understand how we can become better allies, better champions, and more aware around all things around topics surrounding race, class, gender, sexism, LGBTQ+. We're going to be here a little while as we unpack a lot of this, and I have been assured by my dear friend Rick Broniec that we have the A-team joining us today for today's episode. I'm just really excited for this and a little nervous. And so why don't we kick things off with the check-in? And so the check-in is going to look like basically name and emotions that are currently present, and then some context as to how you've all gotten involved in this work as we go into unpacking power, privilege, and difference. And so, Rick, I'm going to get you to kick things off, and then I'll close out the check-in at the end.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having us on. I appreciate it very much. My name is Rick Broniec. I currently live in San Diego, California, although I lived most of my life in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, born in Chicago. So what am I feeling? I'm feeling huge joy to be able to talk about this topic on this podcast. Trepidation as the only panelist who's white, cisgendered, male, privileged in so many ways. I'm often unconscious to what those privileges are. So sometimes I put my foot in my mouth, and I can't think of a better team of people to do that with than this team. And I'm feeling the need to say that I'm not an expert on this. I'm a learner. I'm a neophyte in many, many ways. And I'm constantly learning about my privileges, about unconsciousness, about how to be supportive, be an ally, be a co-conspirator. And with Meg and Nicklin and Henry and many, many other amazing teammates, I get lessons all the time. What brought me to this work? Well, that's a long story. I'm going to take us back to March of 1990 when I did a New Warrior training adventure in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The last one led by Bill Kauth, Rich Tosi, and Ron Herring together. And my good friend Henry Thurman was also an initiate on that training. We ended up in an I group together. And that I group was very diverse, especially for its day. It had an amazing gay man, Leonard Sopchik, who's a dear friend, a couple of bisexual men, a Latino man, and Henry, of course, African-American. And we immediately began bumping up against that stuff in our group constantly, mostly because of me. And I really loved these men, and I wanted to get closer to them, and I wanted to understand what I was doing and saying that was causing them so much distress, pain, frustration. And Henry especially would say to me, Rick, you just got to go do your work on it. And I go, well, what's my work, Henry? And he said, I'm not going to tell you, dude, you need to figure it out. And I did. I finally figured it out. And since about the year 1998, I've been in a deep dive around my own multicultural awareness, Brandon. And it's been another whole initiation for me. And I led I&Is with Henry for a very long time and many other people as well. And then in May of last year, Brian Harold, the current chair of MKP USA, came to me and asked me if I'd be willing to create an online multicultural awareness training for MKP USA. And I said, yep, under two conditions. Number one, I get to pick the team of people that's going to design this. And number two, I want nothing to do with the administrivia that has to happen through MKP USA. Somebody else is going to have to run that gauntlet. And he said enthusiastically, yes. And we created Unpacking Power, Privilege, and Difference, which I am pleased to say all four people on the screen were part of the original design team to help create that training. So that was 11 months ago. In 11 months, we've created an unbelievably transformative, impactful training, created a cadre of 10 certified facilitators, men, women, people of all different gender identities, et cetera. And we have 30 people that are facilitators in training all over the country. And so I'm very, very, very proud of what we've created in that time. And I could go on, but I'm not going to. I'm going to pass it on to the next person. And so go ahead, Henry, check in.
Okay. Henry Thurman from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My feelings are joy for being here. There's that fear that I live with constantly because I don't know what's going to happen next. There's been some things in my life that brought in some sadness and some anger. So I'm feeling all my emotions, so I guess that means I'm alive. That's a good indicator for me. What got me here is, going back when I became involved with MKP, there was this thing called a leader track going on, and I had no interest in being a leader. And I was approached by one of the founding fathers in terms of becoming a leader, and I didn't want to. And he approached me a couple other times. And so he finally admitted that, we don't have any men of color, that's part of the leader body, except for maybe one man. So I was like, so you need a token. He said, oh, no, that's your word, not ours. And so he said that I've heard you complain about the lack of diversity at MKP. And my sense is if you became a leader, you can make some changes. So I thought about that. And looking back at the diversity was the brochure they had for many years was myself and Rick Broniec on it. You open up the fold and there it was. And so that was very misleading to anyone who looked at it. So I thought, okay, so maybe this is the vehicle that I needed, So I got involved with the leader body. And through iGroups and my association with Rick, we developed wrote the I&I, Issue and Isms. They got a lot of mileage. It got a lot of men to open their eyes, and I saw some potential MKP. But then as things go, history changed and things got worse, and I was starting to feel less and less safe. So I was very apt to talk about MKP, but I was very slow and reluctant to inviting men of color or any man who was marginalized, because I know how safe it would be. And the other piece is, after they left the training, what would be the aftercare like? So I had some concerns about that. So by doing the Issue and Isms and leading these trainings, I became aware that there were some things that we could do. There were some things that I could do, but it also became very clear it wasn't my job to bring in Black folks or men of color or or folks who were marginalized. It wasn't my job. I thought it was, and it psychically took its toll on me, So when Rick approached me about doing this thing called a UPPD, I thought, okay, I'm in. And as he has shared from his behalf, it's been a godsend for me. I met some wonderful people. And a big piece for me is the learning I've gotten. I knew very little about that word cisgender. I knew very little about trans folks and sexism and all that. And so from the help of the people that's on this team, I've learned a lot. So what I want to say to that. So that's what brought me, that's what keeps me going, the learning I've been getting. And it's been giving me a chance to look at my IO, my internalized oppression, how I got to be the man that I am today in terms of what I feel about being Black and what I feel about my feelings toward white folks and in the world at large. And so now with the UPPD, I got a different lens, different set of lens to look through, to get the support and the healing that I need. So with that, I'm gonna pass it to Meg.
Thanks, Henry. So I'm Meg McClellan, and I live in St. Louis, Missouri. We had snow today, odd, and it's bright and sunny now. It's funny. And what got me here? I am in the Woman Within community, and which is the sister community to the Mankind Project. And I joined in 2006. And shortly after I joined that community, I was approached. It's interesting that you talk about being asked to be on the leader track, Henry, because I got approached by a woman who is on the international board to join the board. And I'm like, I just joined. What do you mean? And her purpose was about my being Black, and I'm like, no, I'm not ready for that. Okay, no. But I also heard from a man in MKP telling me about the issues and isms in the Multicultural Council, and that spoke to me, okay, because I'm a Black woman. So that spoke to me, and I'm like, yeah, I would like to get involved in that. And so the first thing I did was the Issues and Isms workshop. Blew my mind, okay, right off just out of my head, right there. I had no idea that I had any privilege. I didn't know being a U.S. citizen was a privilege. I didn't know, being a heterosexual was a privilege. I had no idea about these things. All I knew was I was a Black woman and oppressed, period, So that was a truly turning point day for me, I think. And so, of course, I wanted to become a facilitator for the Issues and Isms, and I got on the track for that, to be a facilitator in training. And then, I don't know, for whatever reason, Issues and Isms just kind of petered out and stopped happening. And I was like, well, okay, all right. And then last year, pandemic hit, and I got furloughed for the summer from my wonderful job where I'd been for over 30 years. Furloughed for the summer, ready to kick back, put my feet up and just kind of take it easy for the summer. And I got contacted to participate in the design of this fabulous training. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool, And so that's how I got involved and got to meet all these fabulous people. And like Henry, learning about cisgenderism, learning about just everything, the heterosexism, all of it, classism, reading these fabulous books and getting access to all these really great resources. And my mind is blown with just about every training that I do. I helped design it. I was a facilitator in training throughout the rest of 2020. And I sat for certification as a full facilitator. I started off 2021 as a full facilitator. So, I'm having fun. Okay, that's all I can say. I'm still working a full-time job and looking forward to retirement so I can spend more time with this wonderful thing. And that's me. And Nicklin, your turn.
This is amazing. Oh, my name is Nicklin Heap. I am checking in here from Chicago, Illinois, where it also snowed this morning. I checked my Facebook memories, and it turns out that it doesn't. It actually does snow pretty frequently around this week, so it just must be part of the cycle of nature. But it was sunny for a little while, and it was really nice. So I'm checking in with joy and healthy fear. This is a new experience for me in doing a live broadcast and speaking at this level. So that's excitement, which is joy and fear together. Yeah, which tells me, thank you, Henry, that I am a live human, and that is a good thing. A little bit more about me. I am a queer trans man, and I came into MKP in 2016. I was interestingly approached or told about MKP about 10 years before that by a man in the 12-step community, which I also am part of. And I'd been speaking in that context to the fact that I just didn't have a lot of male, community to belong to. And that I was sad about that as a trans man. And he was like, there's this organization I think that you would really like. And I was like, yeah, I've not had a great reception in a lot of male-only spaces, though. So I kind of stepped away, but he was really persistent for 10 years. He kept inviting me and inviting me and inviting me. And finally, interestingly, a man from the MKP California community, who I knew through yet another MKP brother who is part of the Eastern Seaboard community, was like, look, I really think that this would be a good thing for you to do. In where you are with your life and the things that you're dealing with, I think that this community could really offer you some really excellent resources. And I think that, well, he said, I will be there as part of your initiation because I really believe in this for you, and I want to make sure that you feel safe and welcome. So that was what finally cleared me over the hurdle, the barrier that I had been holding up for 10 years of like, no, thanks. Yeah, that's great for you, but I don't know if that's okay for me. So turns out, funny enough, his job wouldn't let him be on the weekend that I decided that I was going to, I pulled the trigger and I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to do the thing. And then he couldn't make it. But what did happen was that I was actually then connected to a number of people in the MKP Chicago community. And it turns out that I already knew a bunch of them. I just didn't know that they were part of this community. And I trusted those people because they knew me well, and I believed in the character of those people, and that they would not put me in a place where I was unsafe or that I would not be welcome. And that was true. My faith was definitely what's the word I'm looking for? Assured. There we go. And so I came into MKP 5 years ago now, and I've been working my way through different leadership trainings. And I had the opportunity to be in a training with Henry as one of the mentors for leadership. And not very shortly after my initiation weekend, everybody kept coming to me going, have you thought about doing leadership training or leader track? And I was like, no, nope, 100% no. No, I have zero desire to do anything that takes on responsibility, more work, burden. Like, no, thank you. And as one of the very few queer trans people in my community, in fact, I think I'm the only one. I didn't want to be the token person. Again, it's too much. Either positively or negatively, it's too much work with a capital W, and I was not about it. Right? I have a life. I have a rich life, and that did not sound like rewarding work to me. That sounded like a burden. And so I just eschewed anything having to do with leadership, but I wanted to learn more about personal leadership. And so that was what brought me into the training that Henry led. And so when Rick was putting together this team and he called Henry in, Henry and I had a beautiful opportunity to share in leadership work together. And so when Henry called me, he was like, hey, I would like to invite you to be part of this team. One, I trusted Henry. I knew that if he invited me to do something, that it was going to be a good experience and that I was going to be okay, and that it was not one of those things where I was going to be exploited or objectified or put on a burden, being the token anything, that Henry really wanted me to be there because he believed in the quality of the person that I was and what I could bring to the team. And I felt good about that. That felt rich and positive, like an experience that I wanted to participate in, and that has been true. It was really cool. I got a nickname on the team very, very quickly. I was the little brother because we very much like a family. In the way that we interact with each other and the way that we contribute to the work that we do. It's very much not just colleagues, but truly a loving community of people that work together toward a common goal. And it was cool to be the little brother doing leadership work at this level for the first time ever. And to feel supported and nurtured and mentored and trusted when I was given responsibilities that I would be able to do them, and fully supported in every part of that work. Yeah, so that's what brought me here. When Rick reached out and was like, hey, would you like to be on the MKP USA podcast? I was like, I've watched these for years, but I was like, I never thought about really like being on one. And I was like, cool, yeah, I've never done something, but I trust my team and I trust MKP to not put me in a place where I'm going to be objectified or burdened by work that isn't mine to do. Yeah, so I'm here and present with joy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nicklin, and thank you all for checking in. Brandon, checking in with loads of joy and loads of fear. Big part of this podcast is to lean into courageous conversations and into topics that widely are considered taboo. So if it's taboo and if it's uncomfortable, I'm not even going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But what I love about the Mankind Project, what I love about the people I get to interact with through my affiliations with the Mankind Project, is there are those that are willing to give me the time of day to learn and grow and to better understand those that are different than I am. And it's never linear. It's always messy, and it's exactly what it needs to be. So the joy is there, the fear is there, and I am in with that. So first thing is first, unpacking power, privilege, and difference. Rick Broniec, I judge you to be a successful person. I've been on New Warrior trainings with you. I have seen your charisma, your gregariousness. I've seen you lead. And I also noticed the color of your skin. What on earth are you doing leading workshops at work around power, privilege, and difference?
Great question, Brandon. And it's not the first time it's been asked. The truth is that probably 85 to 90% of the men in Mankind Project USA, and frankly, Mankind Project around the world, are men like me. And therefore, I can relate to those men. I can talk their language. I can understand where they're coming from. Being white, being cisgendered, which means, by the way, that my gender identity matches the gender I was assigned at birth, which is male. Being male gives me the opportunity to connect with men that are like that. And I often speak to those men in these kinds of trainings directly one-on-one. It's a great privilege for me. Even men that do not get while we're doing this, or do not get while I'm doing this. In addition, I get to demonstrate to the rest of the world how a man that, with all the privilege that I have, can stumble and bumble and make mistakes and still be okay and still be loved. Because I've done it many times and I'm still loved. I've done it to my good friend Henry Thurman more than once. I've done it to Meg, who's ouched me, and I've done it to Nicklin and many other people. And I'm still loved and I'm still okay. Another piece of this is that I have had for a very long time a deep, deep hunger to have a very diverse family around me. Part of it is my own birth family is very, very diverse, but more importantly, a crew of men and women who are authentic and living their lives the way that they were meant to live their lives with no apologies. And I have found that in MKP and certainly in the Unpacking Power, Privilege, and Difference. And the honesty, the willingness to call me on my stuff, the willingness to hear me when I call them on theirs is unparalleled. And it's been very, very beautiful, very beautiful. And I'm just really grateful to be here. So that's why a white guy's in this work and leading this work. Yeah, I cringe when I'm recognized as the program manager for UPPD. I think, no, Henry should be the program manager. Meg should be Nicklin. Dennis Nicely, our beautiful gay brother, they should be the program managers, not me. But actually, it's perfect that it's me.
It is.
It frees up actually the rest of the team to be who they are and not have to deal with the administrivia and all the communication stuff that I deal with. As Henry calls me, the Clydesdale carrying the load. Anyhow, that's a long answer to a short question.
Well, Rick, thank you for framing that and helping me understand the role that you do play, because it's interesting. I'm a young dude, so in the Mankind Project, when I'm made aware of something, an area of growth that it was not shown to me in my upbringing, I just want to dive in with both hands and get stuck into it. And moving to the States from Australia, I've begun to build some beautiful relationships with Black men and women and those are different than myself. And it's been great to learn and get an appreciation from where those differences lie. But what happened was when I started getting aware of, let's just say, the issues and isms work involved in the Mankind Project, I instantly went, oh, well, I've got a Black man that I'm deeply connected with and a great friend. I wonder if he'll mentor me through this. I wonder if he'll help me better understand this work. And thank goodness for my dear friend, Phil Baker, who's a co-leader in this work. I was so enthusiastically telling him, oh my gosh, I'm going to be asking my friend Paul to mentor me through this process. And he goes, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And I'm like, like my balloon just got popped. I'm like, why not? You know, like, oh, we got a great connection. You know, he can help me through this. And he goes, well, consider this. And I love how kind he was to me in this moment. He goes, consider that you are going to be asking Paul to relive many experiences in his life that weren't positive for him for the sake of helping you better understand him and race as a whole. He goes, seek white men in your life to learn from this stuff. And so from the outset, that doesn't seem to make sense, right? Just like you said, Rick, but I get that now. Now with that is this distinction, right, of help me understand, right? It is instantly from this place of, okay, well, Meg, can you please help me understand what it's like to be an African-American woman growing up? And it's like, I'm coming from this place of positivity, but that's not the question, right, that I should be asking. It's not help me understand. What is the question I should be asking? Or how could I frame it differently?
What do you want me to know? What do you want me to know about, you know, about the difference of being a Black woman growing up in this country? What do you want me to understand about the difference between me being white and you being Black? What do you, you know, those are the questions that you need to ask. And what I was going to say is, you know, your friend, your Black friend, is that Paul? Is that his name?
Yeah.
So Paul can't tell you about the Black experience. Paul can tell you about Paul's experience. Mm-hmm. You know, see, that's the thing. It's like white people want to say, so tell me what it's like to be Black. I can tell you what it's like to be me. That's all I can tell you, you know? Right. So that's where the frustration comes, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's where I was so grateful for Phil in that moment, Philip, to help me be aware of that. And what I've loved about the short time I've connected with some of you, and Rick, I've got a bit more history with you, is that, you know, this process isn't about, well, let me first say this. My hesitation to talk about topics like race, classism, gender, sexism is to be called out, right? To be called out for my ignorance, my naivete. It's like walking into the fire to go, right? Oh God, this is going to be uncomfortable for me. I'd rather just close the door and not look at it. Right? Or put it off for another time. I've got a young life. I've got a chance later on to look at this stuff. But that's not who I am or how I approach this stuff. When I can meet those that can not call me out, but call me in to these conversations, don't indict me for my naivete or where I'm ignorant, invite me into a conversation. Because we talk about this all the time in the Mankind Project when we talk about helping people understand differences. It's much easier to help someone understand when we're not jumping down their throat, right?
Right.
So thank you for that acknowledgement, which is this conversation I judge to be an invitation right now to look at some topics that may not be spoken about at the dinner table, right? Or in your school. Maybe you come from an insular community that doesn't have a lot of exposure to difference. So with that kind of framing in place, I want to talk about shame and guilt. So I think what I've heard from a lot of men is, so white privilege is being spoken about a lot now. And does that mean that I'm need to just wear this cloak of shame and guilt for being white? Henry, can you give me some context there or a better understanding there?
There I am. Definitely not. It's not that cloak of the shame. It's about you being willing to look at, again, your privileges and how you have used your privilege in terms of being proactive in the movement, in the struggle. we also talk about, it's your forefathers may have done X, Y, Z, but you haven't. And I've had white folks come up to me and say, I want to own my shame about who I am. I want to kneel. We've had a situation where one came before me and knelt down on their knees and says, I'm asking for your forgiveness, And I was like, woman, get up. That's more harmful to me. That's like putting all that blame and stuff on me. It's almost putting me into the place of being shamed. But I know at the same time it's not mine. It's just not my shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that they're trying to find a way to connect, but there's other ways to connect with me than telling me about the shame that you carry. I didn't put it there.
Yeah.
And so what does connecting look like? What would be a good first step?
Having a conversation, So I see that you're the only Black person here. Tell me what it's like for you to be a Black man in this organization. Tell me what it's like to be a Black man in this group, this gathering right now. What is it like for you? Have that conversation, but don't approach me like I have this Black friend and I've read this book and I've seen this movie. Don't approach me that way.
Right.
For me, that's pretty racist. You're categorizing me as all other Blacks, and I'm not. I'm Henry Thurman. I can speak for Henry Thurman, but I can't speak for other Blacks. And even though we share the same color or maybe the same name, we're not all from the same lodge.
Yeah.
You got something there, Meg?
Yeah, I just would like to contribute to this. So, what you said was, should white people be carrying shame about having white privilege? And no, the answer is no. And the thing about privilege is those of us with various privileges, like I had mentioned, I'm a U.S. citizen, and that's a privilege. I'm heterosexual, and that's a privilege. And I'm unaware of the privilege that it is. And it wasn't until my eyes were open to that I have those privileges that helped me understand white privilege. Oh, that's why the white people don't understand why they are being about the past and all of that. That's why they don't understand. What do you mean I have white privilege? I have heterosexual privilege. I have nationalism privilege, so that helped me understand and have compassion for them. We're unaware. I'm unaware of the edge that I have, the leg up that I have being a U.S. citizen. For immigrants, it's given me a new understanding of the challenge that immigrants have who come to this country, who are trying to be Americans when they're not legally Americans yet. It's that kind of a thing. It helps me understand the challenge that homosexual people have trying to be themselves as homosexual people. So no, there's no need to carry shame. It's just a need to increase your awareness about those who are different from you. That's all.
I'd like to add, Meg, when you say that's where we are now, because I'll be honest, I'll be upfront. In my younger days, you asked me that question, I say, hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
From the shit that I went through with white folks,
mm-hmm.
the names I was called, the abuse,
mm-hmm.
yeah. At that point in time, I say, hell yeah, shame on you for the way you treated me.
Yeah.
For the way this country treated me. Now, have I evolved somewhat? Somewhat. But have I gotten to the point of total forgiveness? No.
Yeah.
I'm still working that. I'm still working that through my internalized oppression, from the stuff that I took on, the trauma that I endured and still endure. So if you, like I said, if you'd asked me that question younger, you'd have gotten this different response from what I said a while ago.
I hear that. I absolutely hear that. And I also want to say, my internalized oppression was huge today, waiting on the verdict of Derek Chauvin, because I would not let myself have hope. I would not let myself be hopeful to have a righteous outcome. I just wouldn't do it. I said, y'all have sucked me in too many times to have hope and have it dashed by finding the perpetrator not guilty. I'm not going there. And, so it's going to take me a minute to figure out how to feel about the verdict today, because, oh my God, is this an anomaly, or are we really turning a corner here? What is happening, So yes, thank you, Henry.
Yeah. I've got Meg, I'm going to ask you to explain internalized oppression. Henry, I heard you mention it as IO, and then I have a question for Nicklin after that.
So we define internalized oppression as being oppressed so long and so hard that you take it on. You take it on yourself. You don't have to oppress me. I'll oppress myself. Okay. I'll do it for you. No, you can relax. I'll just do it for you. And that shows up in a few different ways. That shows up as really believing that I'm less than because I'm Black. I'm less than white people. Or it can show up as, well, this is what I know they expect of me, so this is what I will give them, because I want to live till tomorrow. I want to be here next week. I want to be here next month, next year. I want to see my grandchildren grow up. So whatever will make the power people happy, that's what I'll do. That's what I'll be. That's what I'll give them. If I have to make less money, if I have to, whatever, I'll do it. So that's internalized oppression. Sure. Go ahead, Henry.
It's almost like a survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a nice phrase for what that is,
So it's almost like society gave you a role, right? It gave you a role, and you're like, okay, well, the best way to survive is just to do what's expected.
Absolutely. That's what you see with the Black people who get pulled over by police, just hands in the air or hands where they can see them, or, those kinds of things, because the police are the ones with the power. So we have to do whatever it is that they want us to do. And even, with this current situation, even doing that wasn't good enough, so yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that.
And the wounding is hard. The wounding is big and hard, and hard to get past, as Henry related,
Sure.
So before you pose that question to me, Brandon, I actually would like to contribute one more thing to this.
Sure.
So privilege isn't always so much about what one is given, but often about what barriers are removed, what burdens one doesn't have to carry, or work that one does not have to do, because there are systems of power that are in process that relieve that work from the individual based on whatever category they may fall into. And so one of the things that, in line with the how do I relate to the shame and the guilt, right? Because that's an acknowledgement that, like, I have a relief of work or burden that another person doesn't experience, and an acknowledgement and awareness that, like, my work is different from their work. To get from when I wake up in the morning to the end of the day, right? The work that I have to do is different. And so part of the way that we can begin to relate to one another when one is in a position of privilege versus a position of oppression or marginalization, or sometimes they're both, right, is to acknowledge that that person is doing work that is depleting, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically depleting, and that often that work is experienced as pain. Henry and Meg both spoke to the trauma that they experience on a regular basis based on their race. And that is living with a daily experience of trauma is work that they have to do that a person of privilege, a white person, a cisgender person, a heterosexual person, a person of affluence, right, doesn't have to do. They don't have to manage trauma and the pain that's associated with it as part of the work that they have to do to get through a day, right? So, yeah.
It's great you bring this up because you've just set up the question I have for you,
Brilliant.
which is, what do you say to the white man or woman that has had horrific circumstances in their life, right? That has fell from the tree and hit every branch, let's just say. And they feel low, they feel beaten down, and they really have trouble assimilating any notion of privilege when they feel like life has been nothing but struggle for them. Sure. How do you approach someone like that? How do you invite them into a conversation when really from the outset they're going, don't put any more on me because I've not had it easy?
Right. So one of the things that helps people to begin to understand how privilege works is a concept called intersectionality, right? Bless you. That means that, so we've talked about class, race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, all of those kinds of things. Those are facets of how we experience the world and the communities that we're connected to and the sense of who we are as an identity. So each of those different factors has its own privileges and restriction of privilege, right? And so I am not just one categorical thing. Each of us has our own sort of matrices that makes up who we are, right? And so some of those categories come with privileges, right? A relief of barrier. And some of those categories come with extra burden. And so if you were sort of to make up like a tally sheet, right? That's one way that people often think of intersectionality, right? It's like this like oppression Olympics, right? So, right? So like, well, I have all of these categories of marginalization that I think of as like the intersections of my burden, right?
I've heard that mentioned before, the intersectionality of it's like, well, who has it worse?
Right. Except that isn't quite really how intersectionality functions. Right? Because my queerness and my transness come together and they can't be separated from each other, right? Because they're experienced simultaneously, which means that they influence one another. At the same time, my maleness, my perceived cisgendered maleness, although that is not exactly how I am in terms of identifying, right, privileges me in some spaces and puts burden on me in other spaces, right? And so depending on where I am, the context of where I am, who I'm relating to, the work that I'm trying to do, the goal that I'm trying to reach, any number of different factors, this incredible matrices of factors that come into being as to who I am influence one another. And sometimes my maleness is more of a burden than, say, my transness. Or sometimes my place of economic privilege places me a little bit higher given even my trans identity, right?
So Nicklin, so there's a lot there, right? There's a lot that's at play for the individual, right? You Absolutely. As an individual. And I speak, and so I have had experiences of connecting with men and women here in the South. And now I will say that the South gets a lot of rap and a lot of heat for, and there seems to be a consensus that the South is the only place where racism exists, right? It's like the hotbed. And as ridiculous as that sounds, it's often, you know, if you have the country accent and wear overalls, like there's just an assumption there. But as I connect with more men here that may not have not been exposed, let's just say, or invited into these conversations, perhaps if they were to hear what you were just explaining, Nicklin, they might just be going, whoa, 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 whoa. This feels like the whole elephant right now that I'm trying to bite off. And so my question is, where does the conversation begin, right? Where does the conversation begin? Because I have spoken to a lot of men that, for example, my partner's friend's husband, he said, homosexual people can live their life however they want. I just don't understand it, don't agree with it, but their life, they can live it that way. And rather than go, well, you narrow-minded person, how could you say such a thing? I just started asking him questions like, tell me more about that, your thoughts about that. Because I've got great mentors that teach me to ask questions like that. And what I learned from him was he may not have been wanting to learn more, but in fact, he was willing to have the conversation. He was willing to understand a bit more, although it was uncomfortable, right? Although it may not be a conversation that he would have with his father or his friend group, there was a willingness there. And it gave me a chance to see the heart in the man and the humanness in the man, where I could have instantly just gone, oh, you're not open to homosexuals? Well, you're not in my life, right? You're a narrow-minded person, brand. So back to the question, what's the starting point? Where can we, as not just you guys as facilitators, but where can all of us begin to open a dialogue around these things and invite people into these conversations rather than argue the fringes? Henry.
Simply making a connection. Making a connection is the first step, because if you don't do that, I mean, how can you have any type of dialogue, any type of interaction? So when I say make connection, like just as a simple hi or whatever, the goal is to get into some type of relationship with that individual, but it has to start with some type of connection. So, and that can be confused too, because I've been in workshops with Rick, and I would ask the question, so how many of you white folks got black friends? And buku hands go up, a lot of hands go up. I said, okay, so how many of you have invited them to your home or broke bread with them? The hands go down. But so how do you equate them as your friend? Well, he's my office mate, and he has a picture on his desk, and there's like 3 children and a woman, so I'm guessing he's married. And then my next door neighbor, I think his name is George or Joe. He appears to be a nice guy, and we wave, so we're friends. That's not your friend, okay? That's your neighbor who you see. That's your office mate that you work beside, but it's not your friend. You don't have that connection until you, like I said, you broke bread with them. You've been in their home, or they've been in your home, whatever. Okay, so let's be real about that. That's not a friend.
That's great you bring that up, because during the Black Lives Matter movement, this was last year, I had my friend Paul, and then I had a man named Baradaji join as well. Looks like many of you know of Baradaji. And we were talking about Black Lives Matter. And for me, I was, again, from that place of help me understand, right? I was asking those questions, help me understand, right? And it was interesting how it was framed that, okay, well, it's like you said, Henry, like you have the acquaintances, but how have you broken bread? And the way it was framed was, it's very easy to say, well, here's my house, here's my yard, here's my picket fence, and my door is open to anyone of difference. But how willing, not just wanting, like to say it, right? But how willing am I to leave my fence, leave my neighborhood, go into someone else's neighborhood and enter into their home, right? Their existence. Like the question that you posed is, what do you want me to know? Meg, all right? What do you want me to know? And that was great, because my whole life I've said, I'm open to anyone of difference. They can come to me anytime. But that switch of, am I willing to get uncomfortable and leave what's very familiar to me to get a better understanding in someone else's neighborhood? It's that willingness and wantingness distinction right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And once those relationships start, Brandon, once I reach out, and it's my job to reach out to people at difference. It's not, I can't expect them to come to my place. I go to their place.
Yeah.
And humbly begin to create a relationship. Magic happens. All of a sudden, I get to see them as a human being, not as a representative of a group. And I get to hear their stories. And once I hear their stories, I fall in love with them every time. We all do. I mean, it's not just me. And that's what changes things. That's what changed things among this group on the screen right now. We've heard each other's stories. We've held each other when we cried. We have, supported each other through difficult times. And that's critical. And that's what helps me overcome the shame. I get to see that my stories are just as important to Nicklin as a trans man as his stories are to me, or my stories are important to Meg as her stories are to me. And of course, I know Henry's stories and my stories are important to each other because we've been friends for over 30 years, close friends. That is transformative. One of the brilliant things we do in the UPPD is what we call fish bowls, regularly. So we have on the screen are all the people that are in that particular oppressed group, people of color, women, trans people, LGBT people, and they get a time to speak uninterrupted, and everybody else that's not in that group is off screen listening, just listening. We don't use the chat box. We don't question. We just listen. And oh my God, the things that are shared there in the safety of that container where there's only people of color or only trans people are phenomenal. And invariably, the other group, gets blown away by what they learn, by what they hear, by what they gain, because of that safety that's created and the willingness of that press group to speak their truth.
Yeah, they're asked questions about what is it that you want the other, the non-target group to know. What do you want them to know? What do you want them to understand? That kind of thing. And so, yeah.
Right. And if we don't have enough of a representative group of a particular oppressed group, we invite voices, we call them invited voices, to come in and be there just for that one session, to share their lived experience, to amplify their voices. And again, it just blows people away that somebody's willing to do that, to come spend 3 hours on a Saturday or a Sunday or whenever to share their life experience with people that are different than them. It's very transformative.
Yeah, often our participant makeup is majority men or majority heterosexuals or, that kind of thing. And so we have to bring in some people. Otherwise, the fishbowl will have 3 people in it, in the marginalized group. And that way we can add 5 or 6 people to that group. And it just makes it a richer, more beautiful experience. And always learning. Learning happens every single time we do those.
Is the Unpacking Power and Privilege and Difference program that you guys the training that you guys have put together, is that just for white men, white women, or is this an invitation to all people?
Everybody.
It's open to anyone. Certainly Mankind Project Women Within, the HER organization, which is mostly West Coast and Midwest for women. But it's been opened up to everyone now. And I think that was a great idea. And our facilitators come from everywhere.
Yeah.
Why? Well, you can't talk about difference if you don't let people in that are different.
Yeah.
So, not very effectively, at least. Not very effectively. Yeah. So anyone can come to a UPPD. It is, of course, online.
Yeah.
It's, priced reasonably. There's scholarships available. We encourage that. And we have what we call now specialized UPPDs. Like Meg is leading one with 2 other fabulous female facilitators of the UPPD who are also facilitators for Women Within. And it's being focused just on getting Women Within into the training. Now they're super excited. I know they are, because they say that every week. There's another one being put on for the HER community, the Healing Empowerment Release, which is a weekend for women that is staffed by women and men. And we've had other specialized UPPDs as well to bring in groups of difference.
Thanks for going there, Rick. I'm gonna, at the end, we're gonna put some time together to really get into some of the nuts and bolts of how people can get involved.
Sure.
Henry, you mentioned that the way that these conversations should begin is just with connection, right? And Meg, you gave us a model of a question of what do you want me to know about your experience? There is a lot of conversations happening right now. Some of them, I argue, not to be conversations around these topics. I see it left and right on social media. We see it in the news. This news channel's given this spin. This one's given that spin. Let me ask you, what are the conversations that are happening right now that are just a waste of time, like that really just aren't that effective? And why I'm asking that question is you guys have given us an entry into like really getting to the heart of it, right? To where the real work can happen. But I also see a lot of these conversations happening on the fringe, right? Where we're talking about the extreme examples on either side. Let's just say if we're going to set up a binary, which we shouldn't. So I want you guys' thoughts on like, where is time wasted when it comes to conversations around this stuff?
I have a simple answer for that, Brendan. It's anytime the conversation starts with or focuses on blaming or shaming anybody. That's our number one rule in our training. There's no blame or shame for yourself or others about the stuff that we've been taught. But if the conversation or the whatever it is, podcast, whatever is designed to yell at, scream, blame, shame anybody, I'm not down with that. And I know nobody on this screen is down with it.
Yeah, no.
That sets up an us versus them, doesn't it? Once we start pointing that finger.
And it shuts down dialogue. It shuts down, I'm totally closed. I don't want to hear anything else you have to say. So, that is absolutely the opposite of what we want. We want connection. So, if it doesn't come from a place of curiosity, it's a waste of time in my mind.
Yeah. Henry?
So I'm kind of puzzled by the question. Other than like Rick said about shaming and blaming, any question for me is fair game. My judgment is that the human consciousness, when folks in their heart of hearts, they want to make connection, and they may not know what to say, or may not know what to do, or know how to receive or be received. So just starting any type of dialogue, I don't think there's a wasted question.
Okay.
I think any questions can lead to further dialogue, to deeper things, to eventually and hopefully some type of intimacy. But I when you ask that question, I think, so what would be a useless question?
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Henry. Because in my conversation with and coming up, we have Lee Manoir from he produced The Fear of Color documentary. He's going to be coming on the show.
The Color of Fear.
Color of Fear.
The Color of Fear. There's a difference in that,
Right. Well, thank you, Meg.
Yeah, sure.
And he's of the opinion that, he sees conflict as a great thing at times to really get to the root of something. And, in my time with the Mankind Project, I think if all this time, money, energy into this work, if there's one thing I could take away and nothing else, it would be clearings. Right? To be able to clear energy with someone, the result of conflict, because I'm learning that conflict really is a result of progress in many ways. is that it's like the pimple, right? It's coming to the surface and boom. Henry?
Just a clarity about clearing.
Mm.
So clearings are about removing projection of something from within me that I've placed on another, right? That's a burden that I've put on them. They're not really meant for conflict resolution, right? They are a way of seeing more clearly what it is that I am seeing and what I'm bringing to a situation that may be influencing an outcome, right? And that is a beautiful thing. And I wish that that was actually more available to people so that they had the skill set in order to understand where is my boundary, right? And where am I putting my boundary into somebody else or withdrawing my boundary from another, right? Withholding something, that information that is really important for that other person to know, right? And what a clearing does is it creates clarity about what's not real. What am I making up, right? What is not actually happening in the right now? Where am I bringing something from my past? What am I projecting something from my future? Where am I maybe confused about a boundary, right? And creating that sense of clarity and discernment. And that is not something that we really practice very much in our cultures.
No, not at all. I'd like to add to that, though. Oftentimes, in the projection, a conflict is created, you know? And so, you know, it looks like the clearing is about the conflict, when in truth, what you said, Nicklin, it's about the projection, because that person pissed me off because they said blah, blah, blah thing. And it just like, oh my God, it made me crazy. And when the truth is, oh, it hit something down inside of me. That person was a mirror for me. Oh, you know, and the clearing helps me uncover that and become aware of that. And oh my God. And have I ever been like that person? Yeah, I have, you know. So yeah, what you say is true, but it looks like conflict initially, you know. That's always what it is. And it's like, dang, okay. I love clearings.
I do too.
I've learned so much about myself. Oh my God.
Exactly. And I love the process that we have around self-accountability. What is it that I'm bringing to this situation that has brought it to this place right now? Right? What have I contributed, positively, negatively, to this situation being exactly what it is right now? And what responsibility do I then have to make it come to a different outcome? Right? What power do I have in order to change something if it's not the way that I want it to be? Right?
Yeah.
And then if after I've taken responsibility for my contribution and decided that maybe there's a contrary action that I can take, if it still doesn't come out the way that I want it to, well, then I have clarity and discernment about the quality of that relationship that I have with that individual. And I have choices that I can make after that about whether or not I want to be in relationship with that person in this way, right? And again, I have clarity around boundaries, right? So
very well said, Nicklin. Very well said. I feel a need to mention to all those watching live or all those that are listening on the podcast, check out episode 5 of the Mankind podcast with Daniel Ellenberg, where we go into the 3 keys for courageous conversations. And we've touched on many of them tonight, which is number 1, start off with compassion. Just compassion to try and leave my neighborhood and try and understand their experience or from what angle they might be coming from, right? Number 2 is clarity of intent. What is my intention? Like, to be clear on what is my intention for having this conversation? Is it just to validate myself and my opinions on things, or is it to create a connection with this person or clean up this relationship? And then number 3 is curiosity. just to be curious for what they have to say. Even though I gave away the 3, check out episode 5, because I think you guys, all those listening will like some of the tools, and I think those apply to the kind of conversations that you're all encouraging, right? So we're just coming up to time now, and I love the fact that we set a kind of an agenda for this, and we just threw it out. We just let the energy go where it needed to, which tells me that I want to invite each and every one of you individually onto the show to converse with you and learn what you want me to know about you and what you want me to understand, and the listeners as well. But final question before we get into details about UPPD. I usually say, what brings you hope around the topic that we're talking about in an episode? But I want to be conscious of that because of, Meg, what you mentioned about the Chauvin conviction, right? So what is a marker, or where is the progress that you're seeing in society, in our culture right now, as it pertains and relates to the conversation we've just had? And Meg, I'll start with you.
Sure. So I have 3 fabulous grandchildren. They are ages 14, 13, and 9. And my sense of the markers for the future are the younger generation, the ones that are coming up, between me and my grandchildren, right? The ones who they are leading the way. They are out there, marching for Black Lives Matter and trans equality and, everything else. They are out doing the deal. So we don't have to look for a singular leader now. I mean, because we've got a generation, that is really doing it. And that's where my hope lies, is for my grandbabies. That's just where it is. So, yeah, thanks.
Beautiful. And Nicklin.
So at the present moment, there are 33 states out of 50 with more than 100 bills currently in the state houses of those 33 states that are working to put forward laws that would remove rights to healthcare, to safety, to employment, to personhood of not just trans individuals, but their parents and families and care providers, that would make it illegal, for instance, for a care provider to prescribe the necessary medical care for a trans individual, just as one example. And so this year we're only 4 months into it, and it is an unprecedented level of push from the more conservative, orthodox, right, perspective of how our society is supposed to be ordered. And there is an unprecedented level of harm that those laws can potentially have. There was in Arkansas a doctor, an endocrinologist, right? So that's a doctor that specifically deals with hormones, who was talking about the fact that in the week that particular legislation was being debated, had already had multiple patients of hers end up in the ER because they had attempted suicide. Multiple. And she had to field calls on a daily basis from even more of these young people who said, if this law passes, I'm going to kill myself. This is a doctor whose job it is to keep people alive and well and healthy. So my marker is that there is a wave of fear that is moving through our nation, and it is my job to stand as a light and say, there's nothing to fear. We are as human as you are. And to try to find that place of connection through and past, or maybe in the midst of their fear, so that they can remember their humanity. Because it's inhuman to harm another. And I want them to remember that. I want them to remember that they're a human, not a hateful being.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I can see, but also feel your emotion there, Nicklin. And you've just helped me become aware of something I had no idea about. So, mate, power to you, and thank you. Henry.
My marker echoes what Meg said about her grandchildren. So these kindergartners that I teach, is about the more we do this work, less of the chance they may need to do it. And a marker that I also see is that there's something happening. There's more and more circles having these dialogues. Christmas time, I went to Barnes and Noble, and I was looking at the shelf for books that were purchased and waiting for the owners to come get them. There's between 15 to 20 books on white fragility, how to be an anti-racist, and a couple others. So somebody's reading those books. So what they do with them and how they interpret them is another thing. You know, for me, it's about what's the action, what action they're going to take. So I'm hopeful in that respect. That will be a positive marker for me. But then the other part of me says, I need to see the work. We've had years and years and years and years of talk. You know, I want to see the work.
Thank you, Henry. And Rick.
Marker for hope for me? The acceptance of the UPPD, the fact that over 250 men and women and people who have other identities have gone through this training, and virtually 100% of them have said, I've been transformed. I've learned something I didn't know. I am so grateful. Can you take it to this place, or can I use it for this? Can I bring it to my business? Can I bring it to my organization? That brings me a lot of hope. Working with a team like this, and these three dear friends, and the four of us on the screen are only a small part of a huge team that is doing this work, very diverse, most diverse team I've ever worked on. Doing it harmoniously and supporting each other through very difficult times. You know, supporting Nicklin and the other trans and non-binary members of our team to say, we're here, we hear you, we write letters, we'll be there to support you. I have a trans niece. I need to reach out to her and say, I'm there. If your state makes it illegal for you to receive the hormones that you need, tell me what I can do to help you. Those kinds of things. We support each other. That brings me a lot of hope. I have 3 amazing daughters and 4 precious granddaughters. And I keep doing this work because I want them to have a different world. I want them to be able to be who they are 100% without any apologies, and be with who they are, who they want to be with, 100% without any apologies. And so I continue to throw myself into this work, even though some days it's difficult. And I truly do have hope. But then I'm a very hopeful person in general, so maybe that's just me. I'm complete. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of you for checking in with that. I really, really appreciate that. And it gives me a lot more. It makes me want to jump on the train right? It makes me want to get involved, knowing that this isn't a mammoth or the Everest that I perceive it to be, right? That there are people like yourselves that are willing to make that journey a lot easier for all people so that they can become champions, right? For those that are different to them as well. So let's talk about UPPD. All right. We have a very narrow window. I know we're at time. So take 2-3 minutes, right, to tell us how we can get involved, we can find out more information, and then we'll check out.
Well, I guess I'll take that one since I'm what am I called? Program director. I put in the chat box.
Big Daddy. You're the Big Daddy. That's who you are.
Clydesdale.
I put in the chat box a link, Brandon. That's the link to the landing page for the UPPD, which is on the MKP USA website. It lists a ton of information there, the dates and how to register for UPPDs. Right now, there's 6 or 7 of them either happening or being planned up through August, and I'm sure there'll be more. We've already completed 13 of them. I mean, as I said before, I'm really proud of that.
Wow.
So there's lots of opportunities, different days, times, and dates, and teams to join in, to get in on the jump on the bandwagon, as you said, and all are welcome.
Beautiful. Well, for those watching live, I've just posted it in the comments, and for those on the podcast, those are going to be in the show notes.
Yep. One more thing. If there is not a session that's currently up for registration, there is a wait list where you can put your email address, and our producer, our training coordinator, will make sure that you get added to that list. So as soon as those registrations are up and posted, you'll be notified so that you can come to the page and check out what dates and times that are available.
Thank you, Nicklin. Thank you. So let's do a whip checkout because of the time we have. Name, emotions that are alive in you right now, and one just final sentence or two that you would love to leave with the listeners. So, Rick.
I'm still Rick. I'm feeling this joy and anticipation. And the thing I want to leave with our listeners is walk through your shame. Please come find out what's behind it for you. There's a very, very rich world waiting. And I can't wait to meet you. Thank you. I'm out.
Beautiful. Pass it on.
Meg, please.
Okay. I'm still Meg. And one of our participants in the current training that I'm co-leading introduced me to the term joytitude, which is a combination of joy and gratitude. And those are like the two feelings that are always most big for me. So I am feeling joytitude, and the short sentence would be all are welcome. All are welcome. All feelings, all genders, all people are welcome. I'm complete. And how about Nicklin?
Nicklin, checking it out with delight, joy, peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a great faith that we were made, all of us, in the image of something much greater. And it is a beautiful thing. It is a wonderful, broad multiplicity of experiences and expression. And I would like everybody to be able to experience that as much of it and as fully of it as possible. And to trust that if they were to join us in the container that we create, that all of you truly is welcome and that you're safe. Thanks.
Henry.
And I'm Henry, and I'm checking out with Ubuntu,
Ubuntu.
which loosely translated means for the sake of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I do this work. And my parting words to the listeners would be what I heard an indigenous man just recently say, conflict breeds creativity.
Mm.
So if you're afraid to have these dialogues, it's about making that connection. And in that connection, all your creative juices come out within that conflict. Be willing to get messy, be willing to be open and honest. And that's where the creative juices are. That's where the humanity is. And I am complete with that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Brandon, checking out. Oof. A lot of emotions, primarily joy and a sense of relief. And these, I become richer because of these conversations. And I get to grow, and I get to model something different for my kids and their kids, and which is really exciting for me. And it doesn't feel like a burden. It doesn't feel like a mammoth task. It feels like, you know what, it's just a step in the right direction. And the final thing I would leave with our listeners would be these conversations, once they're had, are so much more rewarding and enriching than whatever story is preventing you from having them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like that.
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you all. And thank you, the listeners out there. This has been another live recording of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove that there is more than just one way to be a man. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for sharing this video. I see that there's been a couple thousand of you that have joined us this evening, which is very exciting to see that this is reaching those out there that may not be able to go to a hall or go to a stage or an event and actually have these conversations. So thank you, Internet, for all of that. And thank you for all of you for checking in as well. And we will see you very soon. And Munwa, if you are watching and you saw that I got the name of your film wrong, I am doing my homework and I sometimes have those word slips. So it doesn't mean I haven't done homework. All right, don't hold it against me when we speak next week.
Do that, yeah.
Just that I would get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Awesome. You guys hang around for a hot second. Those of you out there, lots of love and blessings to you. Stay safe, stay healthy. Well, there you have it. Another challenging but fruitful conversation on the Mankind Podcast. And if there's anything you can take away from this episode, I hope it's this: that just because of your skin color, just because of your gender, just because of your political, religious beliefs, whatever those are, whatever you feel like differentiates you from others around you in your sphere or the greater world, just know that you have as much access to these conversations as anyone else. And that although you may not feel like you have the comfort level or the facilitation skills or the questions or the answers to be a part of these conversations, just know that doesn't mean you shouldn't lean into them. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have them. Because I believe that with a little grace, a little humility, and definitely compassion and kindness for all people out there, we can start inviting others that are like us, different from us, into these conversations. Because from that place, and only from that place, can we build a bridge together to a different way of being in the future, to a different way of living, and a different way of living together amongst those of us that don't look the same, that may not believe the same, that may not speak the same language, because we are all human beings here. And I believe we have a collective responsibility for showing our kids and their kids that there were these mistakes made, that there were these hiccups in history that have caused a lot of pain, that have caused a lot of heartache, that have caused a lot of suffering. And guess what? The buck stopped with us. The buck stopped with this generation. That's my hope. That's my wish. And guess what? It may not be this generation, but you can bet that we're going to leave a bloody big dent with the work that we're doing here, both on the show and around the world. Power to you guys. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. Thank you for listening to this, and I hope you have enjoyed it. This has been the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. I have been your host, Brandon Clift, and I personally want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. And of course, I want to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you make it a heck of a lot easier for us to let men out there in the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. Special thanks, of course, goes to my incredible team, Marketing and Communications Director Boyson Hodgson, producer and editor of this episode, Michael Russo, who makes me sound so much more intelligent than I actually am, so of course, special kudos goes there. And if you've been enjoying the music throughout this episode and all of our episodes, check out Jim, Donovan, and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. Now, the fee for this episode is simple. If you found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, remember that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us, so long as we rip the pen out of fate's hand and become the author of our own story. So my friend, pick up the pen and we'll see you next week. Lots of love.